Before we begin, I would like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my teachings and work at Del Seaton Medical Center. Any discussions we have on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and in no way connected to Del Seaton Medical Center. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Life of Flow podcast. Today, we had a great conversation with Dr. Jorge Martinez. He's a vascular surgeon, entrepreneur, and basically Renaissance man, doing some really important work and trying to improve society in general in Puerto Rico while also being a vascular surgeon. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Vamos.
Let's do it. Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Life of Flow. I am very excited to present to you guys Dr. Jorge Martinez. Do you remember when we first met? I remember.
Yeah, in my OR.
In your OR.
Yeah. Really?
As a third-year surgical resident.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because Dr. Martinez, so, when people, I think it's very common, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Jorge, when people do medical school in Puerto Rico and then they go off to do their surgical subspecialty, the dream is always to come back and build something big, right? And a lot of us have that dream. And then for a lot of us, life says, good dream, but
it fizzles out.
Here's what you're gonna do. But Jorge did it. Jorge did what most of us that go off idealize to do, which is you get good training, you learn what you need to learn, and then you come back and you build something that really helps your community in a big way. So, and he'll go more into it, but Jorge came back to Ponce, which is in the south part of the island. And I think you were there mostly by yourself at the beginning. I think you had some help from somebody that was doing vascular, but not maybe to the degree that you had the capability and knowledge. We just recently trained. He built the second surgical residency ever in Puerto Rico. If I'm not, I might be incorrect, but I think at the moment it's the second. Training surgeons locally to stay local, hopefully some, or come back and help the community. And then he also built the largest right now vascular group giving comprehensive care during 4 vessel fenestrations, doing deep vein arterialization. Site PI, I think second biggest recruiter or one of the biggest recruiters in the Promise 2 trial.
I think he was the number one.
Number one
so.
of an international crew. So really big things that help patients, help trainees, help. So I'm excited to have him.
Listen, he has never done an intro this fucking long for anybody, Jorge. So I think you got yourself a fan here next to me, because our intros are always like, hi, this is Jorge Martinez, let's start talking. Yeah. But this was a very nice intro.
Yeah.
Jorge Martinez Trabal, welcome, bienvenido to the Life of Flow podcast, brother.
Thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor to be invited by Lucas and Miguel to this podcast, because these are two guys that I think is mutual admiration for each individual achievements. So I'm really glad that you guys thought of me, and so I could share a little bit of my story, and hopefully some other people will listen to it and find inspiration in it. Thank you.
I have no doubt, Jorge, that our few minutes here obviously will fall short to an ode to your efforts and to your life, but they will somehow inspire a lot of people, as a lot of other shows and personalities we've had here. I obviously met you in very different circumstances from what Lucas had relayed. But there's a couple of things. One is I've always thought you're a badass in the surgical community. He's a badass in sports. I mean, this guy's a
Yeah,
psycho Iron
aren't you
Man.
like an Iron Man?
Like, no. This guy's the real
Psychopath.
deal.
Yeah.
The real deal. And also, in my country, we say, además no tiene pelos en la lengua, which I love people that don't hold back and say it as it is.
Yeah.
And it's, if there's one thing that I love about people that do are that is you always know where they're coming from. If they got a beef, they're going to let you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they're not going to work it out with you.
Yeah.
Because I think that he's very level-headed when it comes to having a discussion. But it's beautiful to have people that are upfront in a world that's full of just this, smokes and mirrors and people trying to fake their way through life. So I do appreciate you, Jorge. You have a second fan here too. And so anyway, let's dive a little bit at what's actually created the layers. So maybe kind of high level, Jorge, where were you born? Where did you grow up? How did you make it into med school? And let's kind of talk about that first phase of life growing up and education into medical school.
So my upbringing was very interesting because I grew up in a small town. Well, small town. It's like 250,000 people in the west side of the island, and it's called Mayagüez. Mayagüez, it's a town that it is interesting with regards of how aristocratic it is, and my parents, my dad wasn't from that town, my mom was from that town, and my mom was a hairdresser. She had a salon, and at some point she had more than one salon, so there was some business entrepreneurship from my mother. My father sold furniture to the furniture stores when it was built nearby, and then they will sell it to the stores. And so I didn't come from a family where we had physicians or anything like that, but in my mom's thought of putting me in private education in a high-end school was very important. And that's where I learned the lifestyle of other type of people, right? And there was one thing when I was a little kid, I saw my mother cutting hair, and I always thought that I needed to use my hands for whatever career path I choose. So one day, I was looking at maybe I should be a tailor, or I should do this, or I should do that, because what other profession uses scissors, right? And then one day I was 11 years old, and in the news I saw Dr. Raúl Garcia Rinaldi, who was doing cardiac surgery. And I told my mother, Mom, I think that's what I'm going to do. And simply on the fact that he was using a scissor, he was cutting stuff, and it felt like, oh, that's what I need to do. And then being a goal-driven individual since I was 11, I only thought of one thing. It's like, why do I need to do for pre-med? I need for undergrad, I need to do pre-med. Why? Because I'm going to be a surgeon. I'm going to be a cardiac surgeon. And I kept going into that path, and the decision making was simple. When you have long-term goals, making decision makes it a lot easier, because you just follow the path that you think is going to be the best. And interestingly, when I was in general surgery, rotating through vascular, colorectal, and other rotations, I found myself in a vascular OR being the place that I love the most. And I just said, this is what I really need to do. I love to do this. At some point I said, I'll do cardiothoracic, but then I'll do cardiac, and I will do vascular as well. And I said, why would I train in cardiothoracic fellowship if what I really love to do is vascular surgery, right? So I said, this is what I need to do. So one thing that about general surgery, and this is, there's some things about this in the book. When I was in general surgery in Puerto Rico, I started in a program in Puerto Rico, right? And then after 2 years, before I came to Puerto Rico, there were 5 general surgery programs. And then 3 of them had already closed. There was only one in San Juan, and then one in Mayagüez. I went back to my hometown for this. And on my second year, the ACGME declared an immediate visit to the program that was already on probation, and they closed it, And I remember telling my wife that the visit was in December, and I told my wife, listen, from today till the day of the in training, which is usually late January, early February, I said, I'm going to sit down and study. And in that meantime, I need you to get a computer, a printer. I need the thing that you put on the wall, that you write on them, cartulina,
like a whiteboard.
Cardboards, 4 large cardboards, and just have all that for me. And then the day after the in training, we're gonna start applying because they're gonna close this program. I know for sure. The demeanor of the surveyor, the way he acted, the way he answered questions, I said, this is done. They're gonna close it. I need to find myself a spot, because I want to be a surgeon. And so I got into the ACGME before it was ERAS, right? And it was kind of different at that time. And I got into the ACGME and I put on cardboards. I divided the country in the 4 different areas, Northeast, Midwest, West Coast, Southwest. And I put all the surgery programs on my wall. And every surgery program I put with 3 little squares because I developed a system. I need to make 50 phone calls a day. And the first call, so you have to realize I'm coming from a program in Puerto Rico that is closing. The likelihood of me getting a position was nil, right? So I said, I need to get me a spot. And the only way I can get a spot is if they don't post it. Because the minute they post the position, then they'll have 100, 200 people to select, and I'm done. So they need to have my papers there before the position opens. You know what I'm saying? So I convinced like 200 coordinators to say, okay, send me your papers, And then I kept doing calls and calls and calls. And at a third round of calling, this girl said, oh, I'm glad you called. We were just talking about you. We just had a position open, just the way I figured it will happen, And I said, okay, what do you want me to do? Oh, no, don't worry. I'll call you tomorrow. I said, do I need to fly there? What do I need to do? Just let me know. And she said, oh, let me speak to the program director. He's on vacation. And then like 2 days later, I get a call that the associate program director is going to interview me over the phone. So I get this interview over the phone, which was, it was another Puerto Rican. I'm glad it was a Puerto Rican because I think he felt like he needed to help me, So he said, okay, you're going to get the position. We do the interview. I get the spot. And I go into a second-year preliminary position in Ohio. And then at that point, I said, okay, this is it. It's either do or die. Because I don't think I'm going to get another chance. So every day, if I see a car in the parking lot, when I came in, I said, I need to come half hour earlier every day. Every time I saw somebody parking their car before me, I would come half hour early until I was the first person in the hospital and the last to leave every day until I secure my categorical position,
You know what? It's crazy what we international medical graduates go through in attempting to secure these positions, and it's not surprising. And I would be I'm tickled to know what the statistics are, but it's not surprising that the per capita number of applicants from IMG programs that make it in, I would assure you that a lot of them become chief residents.
Yeah.
Because they outwork every single guy in the program. And the same thing happened to me, Jorge. I know that you don't know this story, but I had done everything in Costa Rica. I had done my residency in Costa Rica, vascular surgery. Then I went to Germany and I did my fellowship. And then I fly back to Costa Rica because I had a German government grant that obligated me to go. And my project was developing a limb preservation unit in the social security system of Costa Rica. And the Germans pay for my studies. I go for 2.5, 3 years, but then I have to come back and work for a year. And it was amazing. It was a great year, very painful in many ways. I had very little money, but I was working, like we were re-sterilizing catheters and wires, and I can't even imagine all the you wouldn't imagine all the stuff we did to get this thing. Today it's one of the premier limb preservation places, and most of the guys there have gone OUS because of the path I created at the time. But what was interesting was that at some point I said, I want to go to the US. Like, I know that, and everybody's like, you're so accomplished, you're on the path. I was like, I get it, but I just want to do this. Yeah. And I started going to everybody I knew that was, if I knew a Latin that was in the US and that, like Luis Leon, I would call these guys. I was like, you don't know me. My name is this. If you hear of a position, let me know. You don't know me. Mi nombre Miguel, no me conoce. Ta, 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 ta. And I started calling. And it was actually Leon in Tucson that he said, you know what? We had approval for our first 05, but the approval came at a point where we didn't get into the match. Yeah. So that position is there if you want to fly your ass. And I'm like, I'm in the airplane. I just like was there the next day. Yeah. And then, like Jorge said, right, you outwork. You're there earlier than anybody. You leave later than everybody, and that hard work pays off. Yeah. It certainly does.
There's a really good podcast by this guy called Naval Ravikant. Do you guys know him?
No.
He's an angel investor. He did a bunch of Twitter rants, and he made it a podcast. And one of the parts is there are different types of luck. There's blind luck. There's like you find $10 in the floor, blind luck. Then there's the luck that happens when you stir the sand in the beach and then you find something. You made an effort. You did it as a haphazard effort. You're throwing stuff at the wall, but your action leads to a certain type of luck. And I think that we kind of do a lot. That's kind of like our way to achieve that goal in a lot of times. So it just resonates a little bit, but that's a great podcast. Yeah.
So then you're in Ohio, you finish I'm guessing that you got your categorical and you finish your residency, and you fall in love with vascular surgery at some point here, huh?
So when the program closed in Puerto Rico, I told my wife, listen, what I want to do is to come back to Puerto Rico and open a surgery residency. I always have like a project in mind. I always have something that I want to do, and there's always a project in mind. And I saw this as my social contribution. I said, if I come back, I need to, I will open a general surgery program because Puerto Rican needs surgeons, and this will be something that I will do that will be socially favorable, right? So I told my wife this, and so the one thing that I needed to do was because the programs will close constantly in Puerto Rico because of their academic scholarly productivity. Right. So when I was applying for residency, I look at all the programs, and the one thing that drew me to select Jones Vascular Center was Dr. Anthony Camarota. When I look at his CV and the research center that they had, I said, that's where I need to go. I think that if I go there, he'll teach me what I need to know to become a program director, not on the leadership part, but on how to develop a program that has some good scholarly productivity, and we can get the accreditations and stay there, and stay up there. And that's why I chose Jobs. I interviewed in many other places that were very good programs, but for some reason, when I interviewed with Camarota, after looking at doing the due diligence with the programs, I felt that was the man for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Something told me this is the guy that you need to hook up with, because he'll teach you what you need to know to be productive. So I did, and when I was there, and he'll tell you, I was his most productive fellow ever. We had 8 publications in 2 years, which by the time you come in, I just start working, and they had some other publications out of the work that I left behind. So I think that was it was great. But most important, I knew that this is what I needed to do when I came back to Puerto Rico, I could open the general surgery program again. And that's how I ended up in Ponce, Puerto Rico. Because when I came and I went around the island, the only hospital that really had probabilities of opening a general surgery program was this hospital, St. Luke's Episcopal. They already had internal medicine, emergency medicine, they had transitional year, they had PEDS, they had OBGYN, and surgery was not, they had surgery in the past, but it was closed. Puerto Rico, the healthcare system in Puerto Rico got really transformed in the early 90s. It went from a socialized type healthcare system to a managed care healthcare model, and so the consequences of that model changing was that all the social or the public hospital that sponsor all the residency programs got sold out to private investors, and then in a matter of 5 years we lost 32 training programs. Yeah, so we had like 70 programs and came down to less than 40 programs because of in a matter of 5 years. So now we went from 19,000 doctors in Puerto Rico to 9,000 doctors in less than a decade. But this happened in the 90s. Now in 2023, we've been looking at the tendencies, and when you look at 2012 to 2022, we lost 10,000 doctors. That had either retired or moved elsewhere. So this is one of the key points in the book I wrote, because it is extremely concerning, and our healthcare system had not changed for the past 30 years. And I think what the Einstein theory of quantical craziness. Right? It's Einstein theory of quantical craziness that says that how can you get different results if you do the exact same model over and over and over again? So there's a point where you say, okay, this is no longer working. We need to change it.
Jorge, do you believe that the main reason it wasn't the because I'm guessing the medical schools remained open, so you were graduating medical physicians, but they had to migrate to the U.S. homeland because there was no alternatives to do residency there. Is this the main problem that drives everybody? And then nobody comes back because once they're here, maybe they get they meet their wives, they have a kid, they have a job, and then it's harder for them to move back.
In Puerto Ricans that study medicine each year, it's over 400 that graduate from medical school every year. But there's only 230 positions for residency. And we need to have, if we want to fix this problem, we need to increase those residency positions to at least 500 to 600 and keep them up for no less than 10 years. And then maybe in 10 years we can readjust because we already have certain areas that are properly covered. But the other thing is that this needs done for sure, But there's one thing that is very important is that we have no data to decide what residency should be our top priority. Like nobody knows. Nobody knows whether it should be cardiac and thoracic surgeons because we only have 12 and they're all in the 60s. You know, you cannot tell whether it's endocrinologists versus more cardiologists. They're opening a fourth cardiology program. I don't think we need more cardiologists. I think we have enough cardiologists to take care of the island. You know, OB-GYN, GYNs, there's a foundation called ProGyn, which is a beautiful foundation that was opened by a good friend of mine. They did a study recently, and their findings were that they need no more GYN. With the ones that are being graduated, they're doing well. You know, the population can be properly treated. But then there are issues with birth, right? And then so there's some adjustment that need done. So those people who are here actually are willing to take care of the newborns, you know, to do the deliveries, because people don't want to do that because it's the risk benefit assessment tells them not to do them. So women, they don't have a place to go deliver because there's no doctor to help them. And it's not because they need more doctors. It's because, you know, the laws and what pays for these procedures, it's like they say, no, man, I'll do GYN only. I'm not doing deliveries anymore, you know?
Yeah. What is tell me a little bit, because I'm ignorant to this point. Puerto Rico's population is 3.5, 3.3?
It's down now.
Million?
After the hurricane and after the whole thing.
What's the population currently of Puerto Rico?
The hurricane went down to 3.2, and right now it's estimated that we're up to 3.5. You know, so a lot of the people some people came back. And then, you know, as the labor market had improved, slowly, you know, some people that lost their jobs and left are coming back home and you know, started to work again.
Okay, I'll tell you, like, and I always thought that this was like an easy way to maybe fix a bad, like help improve a bad like systemic problem, because I tried to come back. You know, I went when I was a third year resident. I went to you because you were like one of the people I heard was doing good work, and I was like, hey, I'm looking to move back. I didn't want to move to Ponce because I was single and like I wanted to be in San Juan and whatever. So I went around San Juan and I went to all these like hospital administrators who for some reason like seemed to have like no interest in like offer me anything. You had to kind of beg, and I'm like, what's going on here? You know, there's all this supposed need, but there's like really no one's really saying, like it wasn't even like that enthusiastic compared to like other experiences I had like going to other job interviews in the States. And later thinking about it, I found there is no way for someone that wants to come back, be any special and be like hooked up with a hospital system or a group that's in need of a physician. So say there's a Menonitas needs a physician, you know, there should be if the College of Physicians, you know, is looking into improving that. I mean, there should be a way to connect the need with the people that want to come fill that need. I don't know if you've thought about that.
Yeah. So, Lucas, there is a Puerto Rico business model is a bit different than in the U.S. You know, like hospitals that don't have a service don't understand it, and you do. There is a lot of need, definitely there is a need. It doesn't matter where you go, you have plenty of work, you know, but the thing is that they don't understand it. And then there's a part of when you run a business model that is like you barely profit, investing is kind of difficult. You know, and so there are some institutions that will, you come in, you say, okay, for me to start my practice, we need to change some things in the OR. Okay, what do you need? And you put your wish list, and they do an assessment. They say, okay, this is $2 million. Ain't gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? So, and there's the other situation that we have is that some hospitals in Puerto Rico, they think they have vascular care because they don't even understand what we do. And then there's the third situation, which is called what I call los caciques. You know what a cacique is? It's somebody that is the ringleader, and it's not going to let you go in because it doesn't matter. Whatever, your mere presence is a threat to their existence. So it's very complex, the business model in the island. I have 2 chapters on this in the book because of that, and it's quite complex, if you ask me. That's why having a mentor that walks you through this process is probably the best tool that you can have on all of it. And the other thing is that if you ask me, like I've told you before, I think that we should pack in groups because that's another thing. We have our most important business partner, which is the insurance providers. Because remember, when you're on a private practice, okay, like for example, you can come in and be hired by the hospital, and then you will think of, okay, so how am I evaluated? Am I going to be evaluated through RUVs? Is it going to be? Oh, none of that. It's really the way it gets done here, you know? I don't know if you follow, but the model that you will see when you are hired by a hospital is not the same as you will see here. They will say, okay, we'll pay you this much, and you need to take call, you need to deal certain cases, and they'll put some random numbers that sometimes they don't they don't translate into economic profit, not for you, not for the hospital, and it's basically pure out of ignorance, if I might say, with regards of our type of practice.
Now, the walk me through this, because again, I mean, all this comes from a place of ignorance. But you said there was a reform in the 90s where I'm guessing that you initiate a Medicaid program, a Medicare program for 65 and older, and probably the integration of commercial insurances. And with that, have you not also had the migration of private hospital systems that function in the mainland and that have their roots over there, that know how the business is run in the mainland, and that use Medicare, DRG codes, and all these other things to create a sustainable model of privatized care, if you may?
So the language, Miguel, the language is the same. We use DRGs, but Puerto Rico, for example, so Medicaid, it's a peculiar Medicaid because we provide, it's run by private insurers. The Medicaid program is just like you having Blue Shield, Blue Cross. Okay, the private insurers will take a population, and then the government will give them the money to run that population. And then, so the one thing that these people do is that they have hiring autonomy. So we all know what Medicare pays, but so let's give you an example. Some of the insurance providers that are giving health care to the Medicaid population, which is like a private insurer that are getting the money to provide this service, they will send you a contract that says 70% Medicare rate. You see what I'm saying? And then of course I can say, no, I'm not doing that. Like for example, for me, what I did many years ago is that I hired an expert in ¿cómo se dice? Actuarial in English. Actuarial, which is a statistical term.
Actuary, maybe.
It could be. So these people, so this guy comes in, he grabs all your billing, right? And he will tell you, okay, these are your top 100 codes, these are your top 20 codes, these are your top 5 codes, these are your top 10 codes, and then your top 50, and he'll group them, right? And then we'll sit down and decide, okay, for this I can take 70 because, it doesn't matter. But for this, I want to ask for 120% Medicare, right? And then I'll create my own billing codes for not the billing codes, but how much I want to get paid for each billing code. My own, I forgot the name of it. Well, so my point is that then you will sit down with the company and say, okay, who's taking care of your patients? They're going to end up in my ER anyway, so you might as well, sit down and send them to me because it's more cost efficient for you that I see them before they come to the ER. Yeah, and then you work. It has certain amount of entrepreneurship that you need to have to deal with this situation. And hire the correct lawyers and know the right people. It's a very interesting thing. And then Medicare is all Medicare Advantage. 97% of the people in Medicare has Medicare Advantage. And then so Medicare Advantage also has that they can hire doctors the way they want to. To give you an example, up till 2 years ago, the Medicare Advantages program in Puerto Rico were hiring people with the Medicare rates from 2016, But they got a raise from the government since 2020. They got a raise to be almost at the same rate as some areas in the United States. But they decided to keep the contracts at the 2016 rates, So it's a complex situation that doesn't work in favor of the doctors, doesn't work in favor of the patient, because when you have, the situation of the doctors means being like you have to struggle for everything, then some of the people say, you know what, I don't want to go through this. See you later. And a lot of people leave because of that.
Because it sounds to me, I mean, obviously this is a highly complex problem, but it sounds to me like you have a population of people that need care. You have a significant drop in the physician force, and there seems to be two ways to fix it. You open up more residency programs, so you need federal government incentives because most of the residency positions are funded by federal money. And number two, it's almost like a lot of these federal government contracts should have a premium that should incentivize the migration of physicians back, because it doesn't necessarily mean only from an island. Like let's say, my new project Hope goes to shit and in 2 years I'm looking for a job. Well, there should be an incentive for me to go to the island and work as a vascular surgeon because they pay better for the same RVUs. And that would be an easy fix. Like there's no government intention of supporting this sort of, it seems like a fix that just needs some government support.
Yeah, I mean, Jorge, you can correct me if I'm wrong from my perspective, but I feel like that the problem is not at a federal level. The problem is at a local level, because I feel like there's a lot of kind of like regulatory capture from all these companies, some of them like this insurance companies, because correct me if I'm wrong, the island's divided regionally by insurer, correct? So a certain part of the island for Medicare and Medicaid gets only one option for an insurer. So am I correct there, Jorge?
So when the last governor came in, he did that. He divided the island in different regions. So, and that was for Medicaid, but that was a change in for the last 2 years. Like you can have one insurance and go anywhere in the island. They stopped that because it didn't work. There's not one island there's not one area in Puerto Rico that can have all the programs solved. There's not one area that has everything that the population needs. So it was not good for the people. Like for example, I'm in the south, right, and the west side did not have vascular care, so they will hire me. So look at this: they will pay me for the procedure, but they did not have a contract with the hospital. So they gave the hospital a contract only for vascular care, but then they will not give the contract to the anesthesiologist. So it's ridiculous, man. This is what I'm saying, that in sometimes people come in and they have ideas that are good for nothing, number one, and number two, some ideas that might do some changes that will work for a year or two. And we don't need that. We need a change in our system that will create a resilient medical care, and that will take at least a decade. It won't be done in a couple of years. It will take a decade to see real change.
You wrote the book. I imagine the inspiration and the motivation for the book comes from your daily experience dealing with this. You are a leader in the medical community in Puerto Rico. Talk to us a little bit about the book, your motivations about the book, and maybe some of the ways forward that you see.
So let me show you the. So there's a website for those who want it. It has the name of it, puntos-clave.com. So, one of the things that bothered me the most was the fact that in Puerto Rico there are a couple of ways of practicing. There's a group in the metropolitan area that is associated with the university. They have their own model of doing business. Then there's some other people that will be hired by hospital, which is minimum group, and then the majority of the people, which is over 80% of the doctors, they get contracts with the insurance providers. And then I will see, number one, the subject is being treated by the media in a very irresponsible way, right? Like it always looked like it had a political motivation for everything that was said in the media, like in the newspapers, in television, in the social media. It was like it was an extension of the oppressor and the oppressed. So it was easy to say that, the insurance providers are oppressing on the patients, and then they will have a conversation and it's insurance provider, right? But then nobody is really taking this seriously, and nobody's going to do a root cause analysis on what's really happening in Puerto Rico, and there's no data. And then the people that will go in, a lot of the times will be from the group that is hired and doesn't have the struggles that the majority of the doctors in Puerto Rico have. So I said, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm going to put myself into this conversation. And the proper way to do it is to put it in writing. So I took all the main subjects. I'll tell you things that are important. Like, for example, let me open up the index real quick. So the lack of specialized doctors, people. I have another chapter on immediately after you graduate from fellowship. What happens and how to deal with that. What's a private group like, and what's private practice like. Primary medical care. What do we need to do to make it better? socialized medicine. I have a whole chapter in socialized medicine because, the two things that are mostly affected is access to care. And you know that in all societies we hear about this access to care. Well, in Puerto Rico, if you want to see a vascular surgeon and you know nobody, you probably get an appointment in either you go to the ER and they transfer you, or you get an appointment in 6-7 months, because access is it's weak. We don't have enough people to do the proper care. And so access to care and education are the two primary issues. We have a workforce that is uneducated. We have a lot of general practitioners taking care of patients, and I think general practitioners, I'll give you an example that I always give. There is a big difference between doing a 1-year internship and going out versus doing a residency in family practice, because the resident that graduates and is board certified in family practice can take care of a pregnant woman up till their delivery, and it's a normal delivery. They could probably do the normal delivery too, right? But a general practitioner cannot do that because they're not trained to do that. So what happens? They send the women from week 6, they send it directly to the OBGYN. And so it's a misutilization of the resource, because you really don't have to send her there if you have the proper education and knows how to take care of a pregnant woman, So we have two issues: access to care and education. And it's through fixing that issue that we could probably fix healthcare in Puerto Rico. Because the other thing is that when you have poor education and poor access to care, then providing care is too costly because the pathology is coming too late. A lot of people come in with advanced disease that they didn't have to come in with advanced disease, but they came in with advanced disease because nobody picked it up on time because of lack of education. So when you look at it, the only way to get out of this is to train people properly. So it's through education. You need to educate more people and provide with better education to those people who are going to graduate. So my book is all about that, on how to set it up so we can provide better care. And the model that I suggest is a model of centers of excellence. When you think of a center of excellence, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Lucas knows what I'm talking about, Miguel, and probably a lot of the people that listens to this podcast understands. But in general, the population doesn't understand, and most physicians do not understand that either because they haven't been exposed to it. They don't. It's like, okay, so for example, like when you graduated from general surgery, probably you thought you could do AV fistulas and bypasses, and not a big deal. The vascular surgery is only needed for a really complex vascular problem. But then when you go to a vascular fellowship, you realize how little you knew about AV fistulas. So the same happens with like centers of excellence. Centers of excellence are a model that unless you've been on it and you have worked on it, you don't understand why is it that you need it. So it's a model that needs to be promoted. And so I suggest that we do it by law, and that the law comes with incentives for these people who are willing to work in a place like this, because in order to make them happen, you probably have to move some people from their own private practice into these centers of excellence. So it will require certain incentives. But if we do it right, and if we do it, promptly, perhaps we could really make a fixing out of this and get better healthcare in 10 years. We'll see.
So what do you foresee would be the needs? What needs to happen for you to be in a position where some of these thoughts can actually become actual projects? What needs to happen?
Yeah, so I think that from the private entity, the way I think it can happen is that we create a think tank, and we put the right people together, and then we promote public policy through a super PAC or a PAC, because it needs to go to the government. There's no other way. The government is the one that needs to decide this money goes to this. We're gonna change this law to make it happen. And somebody needs to bring the strategy up front. I'll tell you one thing is for sure. Most politicians, although they have good intentions, and I can say this because I know politicians that they do have good intentions, right? But most of them, they're surrounded by the wrong kind of people. They're surrounded by people that they don't care about patient care. They only see this as a dollar sign. They only see the way to create opportunities to make money. You know, so this is something that is very dangerous, and some politicians, they don't know enough to make proper decisions. And if they surround themselves by the people who only see this as a way to make money, so we need to organize and create a think tank, put up documents that tell them how to do it, make it public, and create a super PAC or a PAC to push the government to do it. The other way is, of course, to get people like me in positions of power that can speak up and say, okay, no, this is the way we got to do it, and this is the way we need to do it. This is because, and this is the plan, and that the government say, okay, you'll be in the position to do it. Let me put you there, and you do it. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't know what's gonna happen. I keep working.
In the years ahead of this project, there's kind of three main phases of your life professionally, right? You're growing, you're on your peak, and then I'm not saying decline, but it's this mature moment where you become somewhat of a grandfather to others, a grandfather to systems, a grandfather to your country. There's a change in the way that you think about things. Maybe you've accomplished your wealth, you've accomplished the goals you had professionally, personally, with your family, and you enter this phase which is much more advisory, where you care to become this person that could give direction. So in the years before the conception of this book, were you apolitical? Were you uninterested in what was happening, and were you more focused on your own career? And has this been a change in you as a person now, with a little bit more white hair in your beard than you had when I met you? But what's been your interest in the politics and the really becoming part of the solution?
So, Miguel, I think that you're right about having some gray hair, and I've realized that a lot of the things that get said, people take it into consideration depending on who says them, So if a kid from medical school says the same thing as I'm saying, a lot of the people are gonna look at them, yeah, but what do you know, bro? So, and it's funny because some people think that they should be talking, and in reality they should be listening. So I've been working for a long period of time, and making sure that I progress myself into having the respect of my community, having the respect of the doctors in the island. So when it came the time to properly speak up and say what needed to be said, or what I think is, in my opinion, needs to be said, that people will actually listen to it, because it's just, like people speak of equality, but there's no equality. Forget it. There's unless you take into account accomplishments and talent, it's not. It's like when Lucas and Miguel speak in the vascular community now, they are heard differently than when Lucas and Miguel spoke when they were just fresh out of fellowship. You guys have a something to back your words, And I think this is important. So, well, for me, it's been a stepwise approach. I did my training. I started some program that has social responsibility. I work with societies. I move myself up, and now I think it's time for me to speak up and try to implement changes. Plus, the other thing is that there's a lot of people that you need to know to implement changes, and you need to understand how things really work. And I can tell you for sure, 10 years ago, I had no clue. I was in it and I had no clue, zero experience. Now I've gone around a couple of times and I think I see it better. And so I think this is the time for me to do this.
So if you had the opportunity, given the right set of conditions, would you leave your clinical career for a position as a public servant?
So there are a couple of ways that you could do public service in Puerto Rico, right? There are like the Ministry of Health. You don't need to leave your private practice. You could like slow it down and still practice. So that will be a position. So for example, if you do like if you become a senator or an elected position in Puerto Rico, it's a full-time job. You cannot receive more than X amount of incomes each year in any other way other than being a senator. Like a senator pays like 200,000 a year, and you can receive like 200,000 more from other business ventures. But that's it. So if you look at it, if I would do something like this, I'll probably. And I don't know if I will take an elected position right now. If I will do that, I will do it later when I'm ready to say, okay, I'm done with clinical practice. Right now, I don't. First, I love what I do. Like I tell people, don't tell anybody, well, I'll pay to do what I do.
I think we all feel the same.
Yeah. And then the second thing is that on top that I love it, I really love it. On top of that, I will say that I'm not in the position of retirement. I will still work another 8 to 10 more years to say it economically independent. And I've been putting money aside for a while, but I don't know, man. I have expensive hobbies.
Well, I'm very jealous because I think I'm about 30 years away from that. So that's not the issue. But it's interesting how it's a predicament, because there's this passion of you to give to others. There's this passion of you to fix a lot of these problems. It seems like you know, or at least you see things in a way that are fit for a solution, but you may not be in the position to leave your current job. Also, because I think you are being part of the solution as an academic physician, right? Because the island needs physicians. Yeah. The island needs good vascular surgeons. And you are certainly putting your grain of salt into trying to fix that at a very granular level. So I think also, like you, probably the best solution may be a good friend. And here's hard, but be a good friend of smart politicians and remove those that surround them that are a negative impact, and get yourself into a position where you can become a catalyst of change to others that take that public service. And then maybe in the future, when you're done with your academic and your professional career, I see you taking a very high level political position in the island and bringing about more change too.
Yeah. So the word that describes that right now would be a good bourgeoisie. Oh my God, there's people in society that have good social and cultural leverage through their accomplishments in the private sector, and some people some people, when you speak to certain political inclinations, yeah, they see that as a bad thing, but it can be a good thing if you influence politicians in the right way. And so the book has done a little bit of that for me because, it has put me in the position where I've been able to express this in the in the public arena. I hired a publicist, and we spoke about the purpose of doing all this, and she understood exactly what I wanted to do, and it's being. I think the island knows what I'm trying to do, and a lot of people have heard that from from me saying it. We'll see what happens. Miguel, I hope, and Lucas, you guys read it and see how many of the struggles that we have are similar, and how a lot of the struggles that we have are absolutely different. But I think some of the ideas that I propose are probably good ideas for many communities, because there are many communities, not just in the US, but in Latin America as well, that have similar struggles. And I think that uh, I hope one day this is something that people take it into consideration and helps their plans do it better.
Are you gonna did because I've had conversations with other people that have written books, and some of them express it as some of the worst things that they ever decided to do, because it was very consuming. They were goal oriented, so nothing would move them away from getting this thing, and it's hours and hours of research and writing and editing and getting back. So did you like the experience of writing the book? And B, do you consider yourself a good writer? And will you go on? C, third question, will you go on to write more books about opinion and changes in healthcare and society? What are those three questions?
So, number one, I think that writing for me, it was something that I had on my bucket list. So I always wanted to do it, and I just needed something that was passionate enough, that I was passionate enough about, to say, okay, this is it. I'm going for it. So that's why I wrote this time. And the third question, yeah, I definitely see myself writing again, but I will have to find that muse, the thing that moves me, and it'll take some time, because it's not easy. It takes a few years to put your thoughts together, put them in writing, work with an editor, and finally publish it. So it'll take some time. I'm not starting yet, so but I see myself doing it again, and hopefully I will. And there was another question, but I forgot.
How painful was it? Did you enjoy the experience?
Oof, man.
Or was it more dreadful than painful than enjoyment?
It was not painful at all, man. I've been I was uh, coming with the idea back and forth, right? And so I started writing subjects that I thought I should write about, and then one day I was flying with some friends, and there was a pulmonary doc that runs sleep medicine labs, and a radiologist. And every time we went on a plane, they will sit down and read. I felt like I was the most stupid not doing anything, So I said, well, I got shit to do. I got a book to write. Yeah. So I started writing, and then I didn't stop until it was done. And the book has 18 chapters, from which I wrote 15. And when I came from that trip, which I came back, and I had like 12 book chapters written already. And so, because I had them in my mind, I know exactly what I wanted to say. I just needed to sit down and just write them. You know what I'm saying? So it It took me over a year to work with the editor and finish the other three chapters that were not written yet. But and so I worked with a mentor that he understood what I wanted to do with the book. So he sat down, he read it, he told me things that for example, this is too passionate. I hear you crying here. Don't do that. And so I worked with him first, and then I went to an editor when I was ready, and it took me over a year to finally finish the book.
And where can people find this book?
Puntos-clave.com.
Thank you so much for coming. I think at this point we'll start wrapping up, but I think it's like super inspirational and kind of makes me think, damn, I need to start working. I need to do more.
I think you need to get your ass back to the island and do what you got to do for your people, man. That's what I think you should be doing.
Lucas, I've tried hiring you more than once, man.
Hey, I can also get a job at some point. So let me know if you're looking for people, and I'll come and work with you one day.
So that I think there's so much that needs done, and there's a lot of things that can really be achieved. And it is a beautiful place. I don't know. I cannot tell you because, to be honest with you, I live in many different places, and I always love it. Somehow I find myself home everywhere I go. So but Puerto Rico is peculiar, and people are their characteristics. If you like it, you like it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad you guys invited me, Miguel, Lucas, both of you. I have deep admiration for both, and I'm glad that every time we are together, we have a good time. And this was good for me to tell my my experience and just travel through this thing called life.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, it was incredible. It was very insightful, Jorge. I certainly feel that I know so much more about you, which puts into perspective and certainly gives a lot more logic and sense to a lot of what makes you what makes you, that uniqueness that you carry around. Thank you for sharing it, for being so candid with us. And I congratulate you on this awesome book. I hope that you continue writing, and I hope that you continue fighting, as I know you will. And anything that these servants can do in the future for you, we are here for you, as well as the Life Afloat podcast. Anytime you have anything fun to share with the world, you let us know, and we'll get you back in here. So thank you very much for your time, for your efforts, and for everything you mean to the vascular surgery community.
Thank you, man. And I wish you well. I think this podcast will be very successful, and hopefully one day, we can repeat it.
Yeah,
that's right, brother. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.